Welcome back to the Matt Graham Podcast. We are back after a multiple month hiatus, and the reason that I took the hiatus is because I wanted to be able to provide you with a better version of the podcast. In the first two episodes, I was sitting in front of the microphone, much like I am right now, rambling on about personal development, fitness, mindset, all the stuff that I talk about in my videos. And while that's fine here and there, I figured after a long enough timeline, you would get sick of it, it would grow stale, and I wanted to give you a better viewing experience. And so I wanted to have the capability of bringing guests in. I wanted to avoid doing the whole Zoom podcast thing, and I wanted to be in studio with people, talking to them face to face. And that's what we're doing today and in the future. So today, my first guest is my wife, Shayna. And many of you may not have even known that I was married, but I am. And so today we're going to talk about our story, how we met, the things we've learned on our journey, what we would advise to people who are starting out a relationship or looking to find a relationship. And most importantly, she is going to confirm for everyone that the version of myself that I regularly talk about in my content, the weed smoking, video game playing piece of trash that I was, is 100% real. And she's going to tell that whole story from her perspective. So I hope you enjoy. So, this is my wife, Shayna.
Hi, guys.
If you see me glancing over at the screen, it's because I'm making sure things are still working. So, basically, this is your first time ever being in front of a camera.
No. First time on a podcast.
Well, yeah, I know. I was saying that.
First time having like a dialogue on camera. Ish.
This is also my first. Well, I've done podcasts, but I've never done my own podcast.
Taste buds and all that stuff is a good,
I guess,
warm up to this, I think.
Yeah, it was a little more performative than conversational.
True.
But we'll get into the whole taste buds history with Doug when he comes on the podcast.
Comes on the pod.
Yes. So I don't know. I think for this first one, I just wanted to do like a basic introduction and like telling the story and whatnot. So we'll kind of get into that. I just want to preface first that she is going to have some weird jargon, probably.
Maybe. We'll see.
She comes up with a lot of her own words.
It's called Minglish.
Minglish. There's a history to that name, right? Because she's very big into pet names.
Yeah.
For both humans and for
actual pets.
And so what's mine?
Jade. JD.
JD. Okay.
Not like the initials like JD. It's JD, like JADEY.
And how did you come up with that?
At this point, I don't even remember. Like it started off as, I think when we first started dating, it was Beebs. And then it was, I'm pretty sure I called you I think there was like a 3-month span where I called you Potato.
Yes.
For a while.
Indeed.
And then it went to, like Beebs turned into like Bajinta, and then Bajinta turned into Jinta, and then maybe like Jade or JD. I don't know. It just like there's like an evolution to it. And then all of a sudden one sticks.
Either way, JD is the one that stuck. JD is the name that stuck.
Yeah.
And
like my friends will even start calling him JD. Like it makes no sense. But
and now I'm going to get a bunch of comments of people calling me JD, which is, it's fine. But yeah, JD has no bearing on reality. It is not anywhere near my name. There's no like reference to anything. It is just JD. But I tried to do the pet name thing too once, and I called you. Well, so you were a dancer, and you one night stood with your leg on one leg, like my Epcot socks. You stood on one leg, and then you put the other leg, kind of like, what would you call this? Like 40, I don't know. You put one leg on
resting on like my knee, on the inside of my knee.
It looked like a flamingo, right? So that was the whole thing. And so I called her Mingo, and that lasted a good 5 minutes.
So that's where we started my weird says, and I make up a lot of strange things, and so we called it Minglish.
Yes,
off
so
of
Minglish.
Mango.
Anywho, so now that we've prefaced it with your weird things that you're probably going to say throughout the duration of this podcast, I kind of I guess we should start off by telling, the story
I thought you were going to ask me to like say fun facts about myself or like introduce yourself to the class.
Nope.
Okay. Good.
Nope. We're just going to get into the story because, what's your background aside from me? You danced?
Yeah.
You danced,
School,
you went to school,
danced,
and then
worked,
and then
college, worked, Matt.
JD.
Yeah.
And then, all right. So let's start at Matt. So we met in 2016,
16.
maybe 15.
Could have been 15.
Either way. We met in 2015/16, around that time.
Mm-hmm.
I started out after high school, a lot of you know this, as a boxing trainer at a fitness franchise called Title Boxing Club. And that's what I was doing from, I would say, 19 to
Oh no, we're gonna throw age in
23.
here.
I probably did that for I don't know. No, not 23.
Not 23.
When did I leave? That was 2021. So, I stopped at the beginning of 2022, I think. So really I did it for quite a while. So probably 6-7 years. But within the first year I had met Shayna among a bunch of other people. She was a member at the club and, also my boss's cousin. So I sort of, broke the rules in engaging with her. But if you know anything about that business, the
DFTM.
DFTM stands for don't fuck the members.
Oh, we can swear in the pod. Okay. Or we're going to bleep it out.
No, of course we can swear on the pod. It's fine.
Okay.
We're real people.
Yeah, that was the rule. Because if anyone's ever been in like a fitness, especially a club environment, there's this weird cliche with like trainers dating their clients, and like we just didn't want any of that happening at the club, which had happened anyway. But yeah, that was the rule. DFTM.
Don't fuck the members. Anyway, so I was. Should we talk about age? Because that's a big part of.
We can talk about age.
All right, that's a big part of our story. So Shayna is 4.5 years older than I am, and we'll talk more about that later on. But so you are currently 31 and I am 26, and you're born in February and I'm in September. So 4.5 years. So when we first met, I was 19 and she was 24. I was 19 and she was 24. And,
we were truly just friends.
yeah, we were just friends at the time.
The first time I like laid eyes on Matt, I walked into the club normally to go to class, and I looked over, I put my bag down in my corner and I looked over and I'm like, who hired the child to work the front desk? Like he just looked so young. And I was like, and that's really the first thing I ever recall of when I first saw him. That was my reaction. And
yeah, I'll throw a picture up on the screen of what I looked like at 19.
He was a baby, like it's such a baby face. No, this beard thing was not a thing.
Yeah.
He was very young looking.
Yeah. And I looked at you and I was like, well, thinks she's too good for everyone.
I would walk in with like my big sunglasses and just sort of
she's got her big poofy hair, all this volume, probably wearing extensions given the time.
Probably.
And, she always liked to dress a little bit fancy.
Well, I was usually coming from work. And at the time I was working in an office. Like I was, like had to look like a person. So every now and then I'd walk in with like heels on or like something. And people would be like, you walk into a boxing club, but I would obviously change. But yes. And then it's funny when people meet me, I've heard from, bitch. Well, before they meet me, they think that. But once they like actually get to know who I am, they're like, oh, like you're not like that at all. Like I get like the RBF, like the resting bitch face. Cause I'm usually like focused on what I'm doing. Like when I walk into the club, I would just put my bag down, get to my routine. I wouldn't really like look at other people. So it can come off as me being kind of biatchy, but
Yeah.
I'm quite the goofball, actually.
I don't remember the exact thought that I had when I first saw her, aside from, she just looked like a rich girl or whatever. I don't know. That's just the vibe you gave me because you had the big sunglasses, you had the nice blown out hair, and yeah, that's just the vibe you gave me. Mm. And then there was a period in time where I don't really remember what happened, but eventually we started talking to each other.
I remember what happened. You posted on Facebook something about how you were predicting that
I
Snapchat.
posted a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Posted a YouTube video, and it was predicting that I believe the title of the video was Snapchat will be the new Facebook, which obviously I was correct about.
Yeah, you did good on that one.
I nailed it. Everyone uses Snapchat these days.
I haven't touched Snapchat in years.
Neither
but
have
at the
I.
time,
I haven't even.
It was before like stories on Instagram or any of that, so Snapchat was fun.
Yeah. Well, Snapchat was the only one doing stories and
filters,
they had the filters.
Stuff.
They were
Remember
doing
the dog ear one.
Yep, they were doing that. That was the basic bitch filter.
Yeah, for sure. So you made that post on Facebook, and then I think like a bunch of people, like members and stuff, were commenting their Snapchat username. So like I just I just threw mine in there because like we're all friends and whatever. And then that's where we really started communicating, was just like through funny Snapchat stories. Like it was truly just like funny back and forth, like
platonic.
Like completely
totally platonic.
And then finally, like I would see him at the club and we'd actually start talking like in person. And then we truly just became like really good friends. We were like texting all the time, just about like normal like friend stuff.
Yeah. Well, you were good friends with me.
Yeah.
I was on the fence about the whole friendship thing.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah. I don't remember the time. This was like summertime of that year, of like 2016, I think.
Yep.
And then, as women, I always can tell when like a guy is starting to not just want to be friends. He never came on to me. He never flirted with me, like never one time ever, which was such a relief because for me, it's like, it was fun being able to get close to someone without feeling like you have to like look pretty or like act a certain way. Like we truly got really close, like as truly as friends. So that was, but then over time, it got to the point where it was like he would text me the moment his eyes opened in the morning and then would not stop texting me until he fell asleep with the phone in his hand. And then I just started to get this like, something's going on. Like he is totally not like, this is a little different. And so I called him out on it one day.
Yeah, I started simping basically is the point.
Kinda. I still have so many screenshots of our like beginning conversations. I can't even look at them because they're so corny.
Oh, they're so cringy.
But I remember I called you out on it. I was in the drive-through to Dunkin' Donuts on the way to work. And you immediately sent me back a picture of your chest. Because when Matt gets like anxious or nervous, his chest will just break out in hives. And I still have the picture of you pulling your blue t-shirt, title t-shirt down, and your chest was just covered in hives. And you were like,
I'll throw it on the screen.
You were like, I'm really mad that we're talking about this right now. Because I was like, I don't want to keep dancing back and forth. I know something's going on. Just talk to me about it,
Yeah, so I was a pansy and a simp.
Yeah. You were so young.
I was so young. So we'll
get to my response. So I called him out on it. He's like, I don't know, did the whole thing. Like, I just can't stop thinking about the whole thing, He just started opening up to how he was really feeling. And then I was older than him. I'd already done college. Like, I knew he'd only had like one or two girlfriends at the time. I'd only been in like one or two serious relationships too. But I just, in my experience in life, like I wanted him to go be a guy. Like he was 19. Like there's so much life for him to go do, like so many friends to make, so many nights to go out. He'd never even been to like a bar, to the city. Like he'd never did the whole guy era ever. Like he graduated high school and like went to work essentially. So for me, I was like, my whole family had a running joke with the two of us because we did get so close. They just kept saying 3-ish years. That was always the joke. Like let him grow up a little bit and then you'll start dating. Or maybe it was 2-ish years, one of the two. And then it literally turned into 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks. I act quickly.
He did not take no for an answer. I typed out the whole thing. I was like, one day, like, let's just stay close. Like the whole thing, like I love you to pieces. I always want you in my life. Just like go live your life. And then we can. Nope. He showed up at my house like an hour later.
Yep.
And just was like, no, like he was not taking no for an answer. And he wasn't arrogant about it. He wasn't like anything like that. It was just like I still have the text. If it's not corny, we can put it up on the screen. You sent me this text, and in the text you said, I don't care if we date right now and 3 years from now, if we get married, if whatever. He said, all I know right now is that I need you in my life. And Friends wasn't doing it.
Super corny.
So it was very sweet. And I could tell that he was there's one thing about Matt, like when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And he doesn't just say it as fluff. He doesn't say it as like, trying to sound cool. It's truly like when he sets his mind to something, it's tunnel vision. Like everything gets blacked out and it's tunnel vision. And I could just tell that, like I knew that he was very serious and he wasn't like playing games. And then, and then shortly after that, you had to go move your family. You had to go fly. So you left.
Well, I think we're missing a key detail here that we haven't mentioned.
What?
Is that I was dating someone.
I didn't know we were going to get into this. I'm
not going to go into, I'm not going to drop names or anything, but I never cheated. So like if that person is watching this,
no.
Never once cheated.
Never.
Probably think that I did given the timeline. Never once did. We were friends and then I ended it. And then I started moving in. I started my, like that was my infiltration.
Shortly after that is when I called you out on it.
Yeah. I think it was like 2 weeks or something like that before like we started going from like friends to, okay, now this is going to be a different thing than originally discussed. But yeah, no, just to sort of summarize that whole thing, she said no to me initially because I was too young and she wanted me to go be a sleaze bag for a couple of years. And then
that's just what guys did do.
Yeah, that's what guys that you hung around with did.
Well, most.
Well, yeah, but I wasn't interested. I was never interested. I'm still not interested. I don't care. It's not something that I had friends that did it and I saw what that sort of led to, which was just like either ambivalence, they could take it or leave it, or regret, emptiness. And there was the ROI on, sleeping around in your early 20s, to me was just it was not worth it. And obviously, I have different reasons for not doing it now, obviously, because I'm married. But like if I was single, I have different reasons for not doing it now than I did when I was 19. But, it just didn't, just like drinking and, smoking weed or whatever at the time. It just didn't seem worth it to me. So I didn't participate. I just basically ate, slept, and worked. That was my reality. And then this one rolled into my life and I stopped the whole work thing.
Pretty much.
Okay. So where are we at in the timeline? You said that I had to move my family. So yes, that's true. I don't think that's an important detail of the story, but it is true. A couple of things did happen on that trip that I think are notable. Just one actually. And I think we should also mention this too. I remember being in a hotel in somewhere. It might have been South Carolina. No, it wasn't South Carolina. It was somewhere between Indiana and South Carolina because that's where I was moving my parents from. And I remember texting my mom one night, telling her about Shayna. And I was like, ranting and raving, 5-star review, highly recommend. And she was like, are you asking my permission to marry her? And I said, no. I've known her for like 3 weeks. No, I'm not. But I did say that I don't have any reason to think like that she's not the one that I'll marry. And good prediction, but there was an even better prediction. And I hate giving credit. I hate giving credit for this prediction, but go ahead.
Yeah. So Matt has always been like very savvy on his storytelling, especially with video, things like that. So he'd go on Facebook all the time and post like videos from YouTube or long posts about whatever. And he was writing a lot of stuff about his dog at the time. And my mother, my whole family.
About my dad.
Yeah. But what cued my mom was the video that you made about Tyson.
Tyson. Yeah.
So she's like, I really like this kid. Like he really knows how to like like he wrote such a beautiful thing. And then he did write something about his dad. And then my mom met him. But did she not know you? She came to the club and saw you at the desk. And as she was leaving, she looked over at him and she said, my daughter's going to marry you.
This was, by the way, months before I had even spoken to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't even know her
and like
yet.
he was dating somebody at that time. So this was way before he and I. So my mom had seen his stuff on Facebook because at Title, we were all friends. Like Facebook was a huge, huge, huge thing with the club. If you tagged yourself at the club, you had 100 likes because everyone was there and it was a big community. So my mom recognized him from his posts on Facebook, and she was leaving one day and she said, you're going to marry my daughter one day. And he was like, he was this 19-year-old kid, like, one, who are
Hello,
you? Two,
who are
who's
you,
your daughter?
lady?
3, I have a girlfriend. Like it was a
Right.
very off-putting, like weird comment. And sure enough, here we are. Very bizarre.
Yeah.
But I still have the text that you sent Kyle.
Yep. That was another one.
Yep. You sent, I mean, he didn't send me these texts like as it was happening. This was down the road. Like he sent me the screenshots of what he said to his best friend. And he was like, dude, I'm so in love with this girl. I don't know what to do. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So corny.
And again, this was not within the confines of my previous
No,
relationship.
gosh, no, it was not. It was not. Ugh, no,
but
it was not.
yeah, I mean, I will say that there were a lot of people, including myself, who kind of had the gut feeling and knew that, you know, this was going to be the right move. Everyone except you.
Mm.
Yeah, you were the only one that was skeptical.
Yeah.
Everyone else was like, makes sense.
Well, I wasn't the only one. I remember, I mean, it was hard. Everyone, for me, everyone in my life, I never dated in high school, ever, one time, never dated in high school at all. Had my first boyfriend when I became a freshman in college. But for me, like I grew up, I've always been a little bit more mature than my age. You know, when I was a baby, when I learned to crawl, I wanted to walk. When I learned to walk, I wanted to run. When I learned to, I just like wanted to do the next thing always. So everyone in my life always said she needs someone older than her. She needs someone older than her. And I always did. I dated years older than me. And then Matt rolls around and there's just this little, he's so, guys, when the picture, it's like he's so young. He's so, so young. And no one really knew him. And he was very, very reserved and quiet. And we'll get to that at the time. So people were like, didn't get it. Like knowing who I was, they were like, nothing was wrong with him, but they just were like, why? Like, what's the connection? Like, this is weird. And so my closest friends, like I remember Caitlin was cutting my hair and she's like, he's a baby. And she and I had the same opinion. It was like, he needs to live his life. Like he's wonderful. We love Matt. He's a great kid. He's awesome. He's part of the group now. Like it was never a dodge on who he was. It was just the timing of it. Like he was such
Right.
a young kid. So, but for me, like when I was with him, when I listened to him talk to me and like what he wanted for us and he had goals for his parents and all kinds of things that he wanted to accomplish in life, I couldn't deny it. Like I was like, I know this sounds crazy. I know this looks crazy, but I got to give it a shot because I mean, it just feels right. But on paper, it looks so wrong. So it was just one of those really weird things for me. It was tough for me because the age gap was different, was tough. And then the whole, you know, we had to go through a lot together.
Yeah, we did. I think that I've always had a clear vision I've had a very mature vision, I think, and like a very mature brain. You know, I always hung out with older people in school. I never had any friends that were my age. Even that's still the case today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like all we hang out with is like people 10 years older than us.
Yeah.
And I've always been like that. And I think that my demeanor has always been, you know, ahead of my years. But I certainly my physical attributes needed to catch up, and so did a lot of my other character traits. I don't know exactly, you know, which ones. I guess that was a terrible transition into the next piece of the story, but we're now dating, right? And so when did you start to realize that it wasn't going to be sunshine and rainbows and I was going to carry you into the promised land right away?
The first memory that comes to mind was when I went to dinner with my
Yep.
two like my older girlfriends. Like we went to dinner, literally like got pasta and like had a martini, and then I came home. And when I got dropped off in the driveway, I noticed he was in his car with the car running, and I was like, "What is he doing? Why is he in the car?" And I sat in the car, and he was just beside himself. Like he was so full of anxiety. And like looking back, it's like I can sit here and I can tell you exactly what was happening. But at the moment, I'm like, what's going on? Like you would have thought that I went out on a 3-weekend bender, a three-day bender, didn't call him, didn't text him, was drunk off, like just going crazy. But all I did was just, he knew who I was at dinner with. Like he knew the girls. Like they weren't college crazy friends. They were like literally my friends that I grew up with. We went to dinner, had a drink, came home, and he couldn't function. Like he was just I don't remember if you were crying, if you were like hyperventilating, what, he just was so worried the whole time, like just so riddled with anxiety that I was like, and it was not a control thing. It wasn't where were you? What were you doing? What if you cheated on me? Like it wasn't that from that place. And it took my friends a long time to understand that, and my family, because it could come off as a control thing. Like he doesn't want you to leave. He doesn't want you to go anywhere. He doesn't want you to do anything with your friends. And it wasn't that. He was just so afraid that something was going to happen to me while I was out. Because remember, he didn't go to bars. He didn't go to parties. He didn't do any of that stuff. So when I went even to my friend's house and she had like her husband's friends over, he had no idea what to expect. He thought, he didn't know what was going on. So for him, just the unknown of all of it just put him over the edge completely.
This is where a lot of the inexperience started to show.
Yeah.
In terms of
rear its ugly head. It was rough. Like I remember one year we went to Amanda's for her Christmas party. Like my best friend.
That was the first year.
Yeah. My best friend had a Christmas party at her house every year. And it was nothing crazy. Like they were drinking and it was all of us from my hometown, but like it was nothing. It was just Christmas parties, decorations, appetizers, food, drinks, beer, whatever. And it was just a hangout at her house. It was nothing crazy. And he would just, oh my God. And I'm such an extrovert. Like I'm one of those people that if I'm in a room and not everyone's comfortable and happy and okay, like I'm freaking out. Like I need you to feel comfortable. I need to make sure that you're okay. What do you want to eat? What can I get you? Like I'm offering you clothes. Like, what do you need? You know what I mean? Like I'm one of those people. So for him, to be my date and he comes to my best friend's house and is just sitting there, like in the corner, like this.
So for people that are just listening,
Like
she is
he would
blankly.
and his face was like anger, but like he wasn't angry. He was just, now I understand. He was just like holding in a full blown anxiety attack, but he was trying to keep himself cool for me. But what it was looking at like on the outside was just unapproachable. Don't talk to him. Don't go near him. And I would try to break the ice and be like, Matt, this is Sam. Like he has a social media company too. And he takes pictures and he would just nothing. Like he would just be, and it was mortifying for me. Like, because when we're together, he's perfectly fine. And then you bring him out to like a small gathering and it was, oh my gosh, it was horrible. It was
a
horrible.
liability for sure. And it's funny because I think that a lot of people watching or listening to this kind of are probably having a hard time picturing this because they're so used to who I am on the internet. Mm-hmm. But you know, this is partially why I wanted to bring her on first, so that when I talk about, you know, who I was, obviously like I post the pictures all the time and I post like certain video clips, but like that was real. That was real.
It doesn't even do it justice.
We haven't even gotten into the like moving to Florida part, which was a whole other debacle that we'll get into.
And this was just all the time. If we were not home at my house together on the couch, being us, watching movies, doing the thing, he was anxious. It didn't matter where I went, what I did. And again, it was not a control. Who are you with? What are you doing? What guys are there? It was never that. It was just.
It wasn't about me wanting to control her. It was about me wanting to control the environment, wanting me to control the factors that were involved. And I think that was obviously like when you have an anxiety disorder or any level of anxiety, that's kind of what's at the root cause of it. You have a hard time letting go of control of whatever it might be. That's why I never liked flying, because, you know, I'm completely out of control. I'm flying through the air at 500 miles an hour, 30,000 feet, 37,000 feet in the air in a metal tube with wings. And there's nothing I can do. Like if this thing is going to go down, I'm going down with it. And that's why it, to me, was one of the, more anxiety provoking activities that I could participate in. And I still don't like it, but you have to, if you have anxiety, get over the, not get over, because everyone uses that term, but you just have to learn how to give up control. You have to learn how to accept the fact that you don't have control over this scenario. And so, when she goes out, which is never, we are home all the time. Even this studio is in our home. We never leave. Our gym is here. Everything's here. So,
I'm also not the type to like go out.
Yeah, not anymore. I mean, when we
if
started,
I went out, it was to go to dinner with friends or like to my friend's house. It was never.
Yeah,
I got that out of my system in college, and that was before you.
Yeah. Well, we don't talk about the college years. But yeah, so you went out dancing like a couple times, and whatever.
Yeah, it might have been a birthday or like bachelorettes and sprinkled in there. But yeah, you had a brutal time, and this was It's funny, like looking back and telling the story. It's like, duh, he had anxiety, but like he didn't even know he had anxiety until he had anxiety. Like we were working this through like in real time. Like we had no idea, how can I help him? What am I doing? What can I change? Like, should I be texting him every 5 minutes to check in and make sure he's okay? I'm okay. Like It was. Oh man, it was brutal. And then I had like people in my, and they were right to do that. They saw
I actually never heard about a lot of this, like how other people perceived it.
Yeah. I mean, no one really ever said anything. Like no one was ever like, seriously, Shayna, like him, like why? But from me, like I would say that, like if my best friend brought that version of someone, I'd be like, what am I missing? Like he kind of seems like a jerk. You know what I mean? Like I would have been, just because I'm one of those friends, like I'd be honest, but even like for Christmas, like I remember I have the picture, like Matt, when we first started dating, always had a camera in his hands. Like that Canon behind him was glued to his hand.
It was not that one, but it is a similar one.
Whatever. And so I'd pick it up and snap pictures. And this one Christmas, we always had Christmas at my house, Christmas Eve. And
I'll put the picture on the screen.
There's this picture that I took of him, and he was just like pouting. And at the time, I'd be so mad because I'd be like, really? Can you just get over it? Like, can you just put a smile on for 2 hours for Christmas so that you can like meet my family and like not have this gross look of disgust on your face? But like, of course, now I understand that like what he was going through internally was just not equivalent to what I was requesting. But again, it was so, and I honest to God, I look back on it and I ask myself, like, what made you stay? Like, what made you?
Well, hang on. We haven't even gotten to the worst of it.
Oh, I know. But I still, it's just this bizarre, I don't know. But yeah, it was, anytime I did anything, it was a full blown anxiety always. And then as soon as you thought, and again, I didn't really go out a lot. So we'd think we were past it. And then I'd go to dinner again. And here we are, I'd come home and he'd be in tears, or just like, something would happen while I was gone. And I'd be like, it was brutal. It was so brutal. He just didn't know what was going on, and he could not. It was bad. So that was for what? We were dating 2 years before we moved.
Moved
in 2018.
Honestly, more like 18 months, like a year and a half. So
yeah,
we started dating in September of 2016, and then we moved in July of 2018. And so I think things kind of quieted down in the latter half of 2017. I think the first 6 months were really not the most brutal, but I think I got a lot of that out of my system. And I wonder how often or how many things did you avoid doing because you didn't want to deal with me?
I can't think of anything that I genuinely said no to because of you. The only thing that sticks out to me that does bother me that we did is we left Amanda's rehearsal dinner because you just couldn't for her wedding.
Did that really happen?
Yeah. We went to
I remember being
Sapino's, and she rented out the part of the restaurant, and there was all of us. It was just a dinner. It wasn't anything crazy. And you couldn't do it. Like we had Josh and all of his like people like, that you knew from Amanda's parties and things. And we left. You couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we left because you were like hyperventilating, freaking out. or if it was me being like, I can't deal with this. Like he's just sitting there miserable, embarrassing me. Like we just need to leave. I don't know which one of it was, but I think about that and I feel badly that we left.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that I didn't not do.
Yeah. And if we were going to do something, it was certainly like a endeavor. It was a project, it was how do we avoid,
Like it was, I remember a portion of it, me being like, okay, what does he have to do? Do I have to give him like a task? Would it be better for him to like be working while I'm gone? Should he go see a movie? Should he go be with his aunt? Like, what should he do? You know what I mean?
Like, does this sound a lot like a relationship or does this sound like parenting? It sounds a lot more like parenting. And I think that, this was sort of the theme for the first couple of years of our relationship it was very much so a mommy son dynamic than it was a, man and woman dynamic.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
So that obviously put a lot of tension on things. And then I guess we'll fast forward to
when we did our Disney trip.
Disney trip. Yeah.
And we met Doug and Emily.
Right. Oh yeah. We should probably preface that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have some other videos that go into it if you're interested in those, but,
those are great.
Yeah. So we went on a Disney trip in 2017, which by the way,
you're not giving yourself enough credit. So as horrible as Matthew was as a, a partner in life, he did try to do what he could based off of what he knew he could do, right? Like, so he knew he had crazy anxiety, but he tried to. So one year, so fast forward, my father and my cousin purchased a boxing club out in Tampa. So my dad was back and forth between Boston and Tampa. So we flew out to Tampa to see my dad in the apartment that they had paid for, that they bought at the time, whatever. So we were going to do Disney while we were down here. And so Matt again was like super upset, he couldn't come and because he had to work and, it was kind of fresh. So like he wouldn't have really come anyway, but we were going to be apart for the first time, yada, yada. And so I flew to Florida with my mom, my brother, hung out with my dad for a while. Then we did our first day at Disney and we got to Epcot and I kind of figured it out, but.
Well, I mean, you probably figured it out based on how I was behaving. Or rather how I was not behaving.
Yeah.
Right.
We were at Panera before I left and you weren't freaking out. And I was like, he's coming. It's like, he's going to surprise me. Like, I know he's coming. There's no way that I'm going to be on a plane to Tampa and going to be gone for 6 days without him. And he's cool as a cucumber. There's just something going on. So he did. He flew down with our best friend, Caitlin, and he surprised me at Epcot. We have a picture of it and I saw him because like no one solidified it for me. Like nobody said anything, but I just instinctively knew like, of course he's coming. And I didn't know when or where, but he did. He surprised us at Disney. So we did a couple days Disney together. But that was the first time we traveled together. Did you fly home with me that trip or no?
I believe I did.
You did. And that was the first time I experienced Matthew's anxiety on a plane, which was an experience. Like, I think maybe all of us have ever been on a plane where someone's anxious, but like, and again, the type of person I am, if somebody's uncomfortable and they're making people around them uncomfortable, that's like a double whammy for me. Like that, for me, that is like hell on earth. So I am in this plane. I'm probably in the window because I love window seats. He's probably in the middle, and that means there's a person next to him. And he just starts going nuts, like freaking, like hyperventilate, like gripping the thing. And we haven't even moved yet. And I'm like, what?
That's an exaggeration. God. We probably were moving.
I mean, we were probably taxiing, but we were not in the air yet. And I'm telling you guys, like, and this person next to us, like, was trying to not pay attention, but like he started moving his legs and he was like, he just wanted to get off the plane. And I'm like, that's not an option anymore. So like, I'm trying to calm him down. So that was my first experience being like, okay, we have flying anxiety too. Like, this is going to be great. So that was the first. So then fast forward, we love Disney. Disney's always been like a huge thing for my family, his family too. So then I don't know how many months later, but you are back to my point of him being a great boyfriend where he could be. He bought us a trip to Disney, an 8-day full-blown resort trip to Disney World. Like, I just wanted to go so badly with him and have a trip together, and he made it happen. And when we went, our friend Caitlin was also there because she was also a huge Disney person. And we met Dougie on the trip you surprised me at.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So this was the trip before. So the trip he surprised me at, we were at dinner the very last day, and our friend Dougie, we met him there for the first time. So Doug is we don't need to get into the semantics of it, but
We'll
kind of
have Doug
related
on
to
one
us.
day.
He's dating my cousin, and Caitlin had known him because his cousin is Caitlin's husband. Whatever.
We'll go into Doug and Emmy
Yeah.
at another point.
So we meet Doug on that trip. Doug lives in Florida. Doug had moved there from New Hampshire the prior year. And so when we met him, we loved him. He's just one of those people who's just infectious. Like Doug is the most wonderful person on the planet. So when we met him, he's like, you guys should come and stay with us. You're always welcome at the house. Anytime you want to come, please do. So we did our full trip. And then after we saw them at the parks, I think.
So we met Doug at Terralina, I think,
Yep.
the Italian restaurant at Disney Springs. And then we had dinner with him, and he was cool. You know, he's very talkative, very, very Doug-like.
Doug's the best human.
Yeah, we'll have Doug on the podcast for sure. But anyway, so we we went back home, and then I decided later that year that I wanted to bring Shayna to Disney, because before it was a family vacation and I just tagged along, and I wanted to actually bring her myself, and so I did that, and that was the year that we sort of became Disney adults, which I'm sure we'll talk about that on a later podcast. But
We were those people.
we were definitely those people, loving Mickey Mouse and whatnot. And then, so I brought you to Disney. And then do you have any comments about that trip?
That trip was great. I think we had a couple of rough days. I think some days.
I was sick that trip too.
Oh, you were sick, but you did fine. I think that trip was fine.
I was very upset coming back.
Yeah, well,
The day
everyone
before.
is.
Yeah, but
And then
unreasonably
we came
upset.
home, and then we wanted to go back, and that time we did a 4-day trip, and that's when we stayed at Doug and Emily's.
That's when we.
But the funny thing about staying at Doug and Emily's, Dougie was the orthopedic surgeon. Emily worked for Disney, and we opened and closed every park. Like literally, we were there for 4 days. There were 4 parks. We opened and closed each park every day. So we never saw Doug and Emily once
saw 'em.
until the night before we left at like 10 p.m. So we were all standing at the top of the stairs in their house, and we just finally spent, and keep in mind, Doug and Emily like basically let us as almost strangers like stay in their home while they worked. Like they're just the most wonderful humans. So we had a long conversation with them on the top of the stairs, and they were like, "It's just so great here. We love it. Like it's just being in Florida is amazing, and having Disney as your backyard is just. I mean, life's so short. Like you guys don't have anything keeping you in Florida and Boston, and we were the same with New Hampshire, and they kind of had their own wacky story happen that led them to Florida, which is really you should talk about that with Dougie on the podcast.
Yeah, we will.
So we were just smitten. We were like, they're right.
Hang on. Let's pause at the word smitten.
I know. I don't think I've ever used
That's
that
quite
word
a
in real
word that
life.
you just dropped there.
But that's how it felt. Like they're just such wonderful people. And the thought of like one being closer to them was so awesome. And two, we kind of, with my family, like with my dad being back and forth to Florida, my dad really wanted to move to Florida. My mom was very much on the fence. I loved it. We loved Disney. We had nothing keeping us in Boston. We had no kids. Like my parents were probably going to sell the house anyway at some point. So we were like, let's move to Florida.
Yeah, well, so your dad was obviously pro Florida, and your mother was very anti Florida, and I kind of said, as I do usually, I want to go anyway.
Yeah.
So
You were like, let's go home, and you're going to have to tell your parents that we want to move to Florida. And I was
bingo.
like, okay. And like,
Right.
again, we were planning on it in the distant future, but not that soon. So this was in March.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
so
by
I think it's important to mention that your family and my family are extremely different.
Cooler.
You guys were always very tight knit. You guys were very always like present with each other, very, always together. And my family is not at all. We obviously, we love our family, but we just aren't very like, we never spent a lot of time together. My dad was always working, and we never really were super like close in the physical sense. We obviously we like have our group chat, and we have fun together and whatnot, but we just weren't that same like, when I was a kid and I never really had to like ask my parents to go sleep over at a friend's house. It was just like, yeah, come and go as you please. Like, do what you want. Like, go, if I wanted to stay a week at Kyle's house,
You just did.
I just did. And my parents were cool with it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of a latchkey kid to some degree because my parents were busy. And
Versus my childhood my house was always the house. Like everyone was always at my house. I was always with my parents. If I wasn't at school, dancing or working, I was with my parents, watching TV with the cats, with the dogs. Like my house was always the house that everyone was at. So we lived my parents were my best friends. Like we lived very, very different lives. So,
right. So
when we left that Disney trip and I came home and was like, Mom, I'm moving to Disney. She was like, what? Like, what do you mean?
Well, so the reason I brought that up is because, because it sounds like, we all had to move as a unit and it wasn't necessarily that. It was just like, because you're probably thinking like, where's Matt's family in all of this, right? Like we're sitting here like having to have these tough conversations with Shayna's parents, but Matt's parents, there's no communication. There is communication, but it goes like this. Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. I'm moving to Florida. And that's it. So, but with her parents, it's much different because again, they're more tight knit. So, when we say, hey, we're moving to Florida, it's a much different conversation because it is, and
there were logistics to it because with our house that we lived in, it was a pretty big house. We had a ton, to move to Florida, we needed two 26-foot trucks. We had my Jeep, my mom's Cadillac. My dad was towing his Chevelle. And then we needed another driver for, one of the other trucks. So we had more vehicles than we had people. So if Matthew and I moved to Florida before them, we really would have to fly back to Boston and then move them again. So we were like, fine, we'll just communicate that we want to move and make them move up their move
That's
date.
exactly what it was.
We'll just meet them halfway.
Like she said, it was inevitable. They were going to sell the house. They were going to.
But it went from maybe like a 9-10 month plan to like a 4-month plan.
Yeah. I'm all about execution. I'm always about doing things now. If you're planning on doing something, you might as well do it now.
Yeah. So it was a little wacky. My mom was like, what do you mean? She's like, okay. So like it was Zillow, like every day, nonstop, 24/7, like, and then finally they found the house and here we are.
Right. So we moved to Florida and obviously, that was a whole experience moving to Florida.
Nashville, remember that? When I went to Nashville
was a whole thing. Yeah. So she went to a bachelorette party. And
this was before we moved. This was like because my best friend got married like 2 weeks before we physically moved. So we went to Nashville for her bachelorette, and this was Anxiety Jones Matt at the time. So here I am going to a bachelorette party.
This was not just Anxiety Jones Matt. That we were getting to peak Anxiety Jones Matt. And I don't want to cut you off too much, but like
you should tell the story from your.
Well, I'm just saying I'm trying to move the stories along because we're not even close to like the turning point.
So true.
Right.
This might be a part 1 and part 2.
Right. No, I mean, Joe Rogan's podcast are 3.5 hours, so screw it.
We'll see.
Yeah. So anyway, I decided to drive down early because logistically, everyone decided we're moving to Florida. Okay, cool. Logistically, it wasn't going to work because I had a car that I needed to get down there and I didn't really have anything else to do at the time. So I just decided, hey, I'm going to drive down to Florida by myself and, go hang out with Doug and Emmy for a couple weeks, and then I'll come back and we'll all move. Well, little did I know that I was not mentally prepared for any of that. And so I drove down and, of course, whenever as we stated, we're going to be separated in whether she was going somewhere, I was going somewhere. It was an event. We had to plan for it. We had to make sure that I wasn't too anxious. And so we thought that the smart thing to do would be, why don't you go down to Florida while I go to this bachelorette party? Cool. Sounds like a plan. I'll be distracted. I'll be with Doug and Emmy. It'll be a great time. Great. Not the case.
Wrong. It was catastrophic idea. Terrible.
That was the single worst my anxiety has ever been. I was, full blown panic. I think I had like 17 panic attacks in the whole few weeks. I almost like hopped on a plane like the day after I got there to head back home. I was in full blown panic mode. Like that was when I started my medication because I just couldn't handle it anymore. Mm-hmm. And because I had been prescribed medication before, but I turned it down because I was always skeptical of medication. And then that experience happened, then I was like, all right, fuck this. I'm getting on medication. I just need to not feel this way.
That was for sure the worst you ever were. Like I was in Nashville with 17 girls at my best friend's bachelorette party, and he's texting me, I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm going to die. I think I'm going to die. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, and then I'd call him and he wouldn't answer me. And he's like, I'm going to pass out. And I'm like, where are you? What are you doing? Are you driving? You're at a hotel. It was, and then I'm calling my mom. I'm like, Mom, can you try to call Matt? And then my father was already in Florida, but I think you might have actually gotten to Florida, but like, and then my mom had to call my dad to go get Matt to like try to hang out with him and like keep him from feeling like he's going to die. It was a nightmare. It was bad.
It was a nightmare. And
then you get here and there was like a horrible 2 deadly accidents on the highway. Like some person like jumped off of a bridge or something and killed themselves. And then there was a crazy car accident that you and my dad saw. Like some car flipped and was like going the other way.
That was when I first arrived.
It was just, and then Minnie bit you. Like Doug and Emily had a dog, Minnie, and she's the most wonderful dog ever. But like when a stranger that she didn't remember was walking into their house for the first time, she bit him in the hand, which she was doing her job.
She did her job.
Like she was supposed to do that. Like, you know what I mean? She was not a vicious dog at all, but she did her job. So that it was just like, and then poor Doug and Emily are like, what's going on with that? Like, is he okay? Like, is he going to be all right? And like, it was horrible.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, fast forward,
we fly back home.
Fly back home. Everything was fine because I was flown back home. And then we moved to Florida. Cool. You know,
Which you crushed, by the way. You drove a 26-foot truck the whole way there.
With Mike Kravchuk.
That means nothing to anybody, but it means everything to the people who were there.
With Mike Kravchuk.
Meanwhile, me and Caitlin had the time of our lives. Caitlin and I drove in my Jeep with my 2 St. Bernards in the backseat, towing a lawnmower and a bunch of yard tools, and we did not touch the radio, play music, podcast, nothing one time for the 2-3 full days.
Meanwhile, I was sitting with this like, I don't know, 60-year-old stranger.
To him, yeah.
Yeah, complete stranger to me. And, you know, he's like, I don't want to shit on Mike Kravchuk too much. He's a nice guy, but it was just, I wanted to be in their car real bad, but I had to drive the truck. So it is what it is.
You did a great job. I watched him almost get completely run off the road. Respect Mack trucks. I just realized I've been pretty much looking at the viewfinder this whole time. So
I know you got to look at the
viewers are going to be like, hello, I'm over here. Sorry.
I know.
Okay. We got to Florida. Things are great. Florida's great. You were a little annoyed because I spent a lot of time at my parents' house because there was a lot to do here and all that stuff. And you wanted to because you and Dougie had things you wanted to start doing and working together and filming and producing stuff.
Yeah. So how the whole, thing was kind of arranged was, we didn't have jobs coming down here. And so the whole arrangement was basically Doug was running a YouTube channel. And I was going to, as the video guy and editing guy, I was going to, shoot and edit for him as sort of rent payment. And that obviously blossomed into other things like, the Taste Bud Show, which I'm sure we'll talk about when I get Doug on the podcast. But so that's kind of how that arrangement was set up. So I was very, I wanted to get started on that because obviously not only was that like how we were going to like pay rent, so to speak, but it was also, I was looking forward to it because he was making content about Disney at the time. We were big Disney people and, it was exciting and I liked working with Doug because, it's like, Doug and I are two
peas in a pod.
They
feed each other's.
We're both the type of people that are like wildly creative, but also like completely delusional in terms of like our vision. And like, we talked about this the other day, I really miss having people around or Doug around to have someone that like will entertain the craziest ideas and not only entertain them, like you will just to humor me, but Doug and I will entertain them
and then in the driver's seat with you.
And
like
then we'll just go do it.
Yes.
We'll just go do it, and then like sometimes it won't pan out. Like, we did the whole Minfinity War and a lot of ideas that never panned out, but there were some like the Race You to the Castle thing.
That was great.
That was so funny.
Link that somewhere in here. So someone can watch that. That was great.
But
yeah, we're going off on the Doug and Emmy love train, which we could forever and ever and ever and ever. But
for sure.
Florida was great. Got here. I don't remember your anxiety being very bad.
No,
until things started to settle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because we were riding the high of just moving to Florida, and obviously, we were busy in the sense of like we were building out the room that we were going to live in, because they had to literally build a room in their house for us to live in. Not that they didn't have other rooms. It was just like they were planning on doing it anyway because it increased the value of the house. So we were busy doing that. We were making content. And then we were getting your parents set up in their house. And then the bank account started to dwindle.
Oh, yeah.
The bank account started to dwindle. Neither of us had jobs.
Nope.
And this was like, I don't know, probably like, 6, 7, 8 weeks, into this endeavor. And then it's like, oh, wait, like we have to start like doing life now. And this is what I'm telling Beth, my little sister, who I'll try to get on a podcast. She's big on wanting to come to Florida. And, when you're moving to a place that you typically vacation, it's a bit of a like, I'm just gonna say mind fuck, because like you want it to be vacation, you want it to be the place where you come and have fun, but then like also you have to do life, and so it has its ups and downs. It's certainly more ups than downs, but
for sure.
That was a reality check for us when we got here. That we had to get jobs and do life. Luckily for me, I had the opportunity to work at the same fitness franchise that I was working at before. Granted, it was a huge pay cut because before I was the social media manager, I was also a trainer, and I was working the front desk as well at the gyms. But when I came to this gym, the spots were already taken. There was already a manager. There was nobody, like they didn't have anybody doing social media, and they didn't want anybody doing social media. And, all the front desk spots were taken. So the only role that I could fill was trainer. So I basically, cut my pay down to like the bare minimum, like 2-3 nights a week, maybe, of training. So, I still needed to find something else. And, you got a job at Disney. My aunt got you a job at Disney.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Cause we went golfing one day and she was like, oh, you
should work here.
Yeah. You should work here.
Like,
and then she went and got an application, and the next thing you know, she's working there. But yeah, so that also didn't help our dynamic at all, because now you were the breadwinner, big time, right? Like I was making pennies per week. Thankfully, we weren't actually paying rent. We would never have been able to afford it. And so, we were doing the thing with Doug, and that was kind of my main focus. But I also had to supplement some income, so I started driving for Uber.
Ugh. Yeah.
That was a miserable time in my life. That was like, and it's funny, like I talk about this when I go on other podcasts about the period in my life where I was driving for Uber. And I tell myself, I remember telling myself that this is part of the story, right? Like I can always say, when I'm a millionaire or whatever the case, I can always tell the story about how I was driving for Uber. And so that's kind of how I flipped it. Obviously, like I wasn't going to drive for Uber forever, and it was just like a desperation thing, but it was certainly it's good for the story. But yeah, so that in terms of our relationship, because that's the story we're telling right now, it was bad for our dynamic, and I was smoking weed all the time. And so whatever money I did have, I was very responsibly spending on drugs. And, I'm sure that made you real happy.
Honestly, I don't really think of it that way. I think at the time it was more like you kind of needed them.
Yeah. I mean,
it's felt like it to me. Like you weren't crazy anxiety when you were smoking, but also there weren't many opportunities to where you would have a ton of anxiety at that point.
Yeah. So,
but yeah,
I remember starting to smoke weed because, just again, out of desperation, because I got prescribed that medication. I did not want to take it. And, so we're like, okay, what are some other alternatives that we could do? And she suggested, marijuana multiple times, and I was against it. She was much more pro it because, you had friends that did it. It wasn't
for you just to have fun. It was like to calm your nerves, like,
right.
or like to actually help.
But it was much less less foreign to you
Yeah.
than it was to me.
I didn't really smoke.
And the first time I smoked was not actually with you. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was with Kyle. And I think that was kind of like my foot in the door, and that kind of made me feel better about it. But it very quickly, and I'm going to talk to Kyle about that. I want to get him on the podcast so I can talk to him specifically about this, because we go on and on about this, about the slippery slope of smoking weed. For both of us, and, we've both alluded to this. It's like you start out because you want to calm your nerves, because you want to, relieve pain, whatever the case may be. But it quickly turns from that into like, things are a little more enjoyable when you're smoking, I'm not as nervous, but like video games are more fun. Food tastes better.
That's what bothered me. It was like you were spending all your time. Like at that time, it was like, the job that you went to wasn't making you a lot of money, but you editing all the videos and like trying to get our presence growing on YouTube and all that was your investment. So when I'd come home from working a literal 12-hour day at Disney on my feet
in the 100-degree weather.
Yeah. And you're just sitting in the office playing video games. I was like, and then a week later, you're texting me saying I need money or I can't pay my car. I will never forget. I was driving to work one day and I was on the phone with my mom. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this. Like, this isn't the person he told me he was going to be for us. Like I'll help him with whatever he needs. And I don't want to give up on him because I know that he is capable of so much more than this. And it just felt like for me, it was like, I didn't want to give up on someone I loved. It wasn't necessarily like, I need to stay with him because I feel bad or anything like that. It was like, I'm not willing to not help him get through this. Whatever that meant for us, I didn't know, but I just knew like I wasn't going to leave him in the condition he was in. But I remember saying to my mom, it's time. I need to give him like an ultimatum almost. Like I need to tell him this needs to change. You need to be making effort to change it or I'm bowing out. Like I can't. We need to figure something else out. It was like, I was thinking maybe I'll move to my parents. He can stay at Doug and Emily's house and we'll just like figure something out. And that was we just moved to Florida together. Like we were starting our life together here. And here I am driving to work at 7:00 in the morning in tears with my mom. Cause I'm like, this isn't it. This isn't who he told me. And I did. I talked to him about it. I said all those things. I said, that's not my guy. That's not the guy that you promised me you'd be. It's not the guy that I fell in love with. And he did not make a single excuse. He said, if we ever have to talk about this again, I don't blame you for leaving. He said that he would do everything moving. He said, you're absolutely right. You don't just, and it wasn't like a sympathy thing. It wasn't like I need pity. It was like, he just, you're right. He never made an excuse. He never said, well, you don't know what it's like to have anxiety and I need weed and blah, blah, blah. And I tried making money. It was never that. He was always, any argument we've ever been in, any fight, any disagreement, any area where I feel like he is not up to par with whatever he said or whatever I needed. The thing for me that's always kept me with him is we never had to go back to it. I would express like how I was feeling, where he was coming up short. Even sometimes he'd express to me where he was coming up short, and we never had to go back. He would just assess it and work harder, and he'd take everything that he knew would move us forward, and he would work relentlessly at it. And it was hard for me. I don't know if any of you have ever had to tell someone that you love really harsh truths that will really hurt them. But that sucked. That was not easy. That was especially the type of person I am. Like I making someone uncomfortable or feel poorly about themselves is like I hate it. And I knew part of me was like, if I say this to him, is it going to make it worse? Like he's already so low. Everything in his life is just like not in a great place. If I literally sit there and say to him all those things, like you're not being the man I need you to be. I'm paying for this. I'm doing that. Like I remember I was walking around Springs. My aunt came to visit and you weren't there because you had to work and you were going to meet us. And then you texted me and you said, I can't come. And I was like, why? You said, I need to get gas. And I said, okay. And you said, I can't afford gas. And you went to use your Venmo card and you apparently owed money to Venmo
I
because you were
overdrafted,
overdrafted.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get gas. And I had to Venmo him $250 so that he could back pay the Venmo and then put $50 in his gas tank. And I would know exactly where I was walking by House of Blues. I know not House of Blues. Yeah, House of Blues. And I was like, I just couldn't believe that this is where we were at. I was just disgusted in such a heartbroken way, like it was just horrible. And, I mean, I'm barely making it, and I'm sending him money that I don't even really have, but like can wiggle through, and it sucked so bad. So,
And
yeah.
where did you, to fast forward things, right? Because we've been going on for a while.
Yeah.
Where did you start to see things really turn around? Because I think for a while, because you're talking about, we're living in a Doug and Emmy's.
Mm.
I think from, there's probably 2019 we're talking about to 2020, that year gap right there where we had just moved here.
Mm.
I think things were like slowly on the upswing.
Once we realized the setup financially, like with your work at Doug and Emily's wasn't working, because Matt would spend his whole day when he wasn't doing dumb, irresponsible things or working at the club editing videos. Like we had 3 cameras going for one video at a time. So he was editing all the time. And the work that he was doing was amazing work, but we weren't set up on any platforms to where we were making any money off of it. So he was putting all his time into a project that could make us money one day, but wasn't.
Right.
So we realized, like, as much as it sucked, like we can't afford to do this anymore. Like we can try to do it on the side, but like we need to get him to a point where what his time is making money, because we don't have the luxury of just like bopping around all day and making fun videos and hoping it makes money.
Like we're saving money on rent, which is cool, but that's.
And even then I started, which was nothing, but I ended up starting to pay rent because I was making money. But anyway, so we ended up coming to this house because there's like an in-law apartment in here that my mom's friend was living in. She ended up going back up north. So that kind of opened up and it gave us an opportunity to have our own space, which was kind of nice. And then, if we were going to pay rent to anybody, I'd like to help my parents out with the mortgage sort of thing. So that's what we just made our way over to here. And then what ended up happening? You started making more money at Tidal? I think you got like a management position or something? I can't, that whole space of time kind of feels blurry to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly, what was different
I'm trying to
about
answer
that
your
time.
question though. Like what, I think you just something clicked for you. Like you just stopped, like making excuses. And that you never really made excuses, but you just had this no bullshit mentality. Like, work harder. Like that was what he'd say. Like, it was like, well, guess I'm working harder today. Guess I'm not going to bed until 2 a.m. Guess I'm going to stay at the club extra hours to do this. Oh, corporate needs this done. Okay. We'll like,
yeah,
it was
I think that's what happened. Because Kenny and Caitlin moved down here. That's when I started doing work for corporate.
So you got, so that alleviated a lot of stress. Like it literally happened the way he explains it in his videos on TikTok. Like he identified all the problems in his life, which was everything but you and I, essentially.
Well,
like,
I mean,
yeah, but like financially, that was a big one. And then it was his anxiety, and he just literally identified every problem and he found a solution to each one. And it was not an overnight thing, but in order to fix something, you have to identify that it's broken. And to identify that it's broken, you have to identify what can fix it. And that solution is not fast. It's a long-term thing. But like once you identify it, you can start chipping away at it. And that's what he kind of did.
Yeah, I think I spent between 2019 and 2020 kind of fixing what was broken. And because, there were a lot of, I would say, in that time that we were living at Doug and Emmy's, I was broken. Like I was just, not a functioning human being. And then, we came here and I remember going through a period of time, me and Kyle, my friend Kyle, I'll have him on the podcast one day. We kind of live life in parallel, which I think now is not really the case because I've gone on a really weird path the last 6 months. But we've kind of lived life in parallel because we were both very, similar growing up. And then we graduated high school, and then we both kind of, like mentally and like as in our character, we've sort of lived life in parallel where, we were at our lows kind of at the same time, and we were at our highs kind of at the same time. And I would say our highs are both now. And our lows were really like that 2018, kind of time frame. We both were on antidepressants. We both were in therapy. We both were really struggling. We both were smoking weed every single day. And I think that, we were communicating in 29. I remember like the summer of 2019 sticks out because, we were both kind of having a lot of realizations at the same time, which is strange because, we were both having a lot of realizations about like, everything is not like the world's fault, like it's kind of, we have more control over this mind thing than we think. And so a lot of that, like, discipline and especially, the whole more holistic ways of approaching life, started to become more apparent. Like we both were talking a lot about going outside. We both were talking a lot about, being, eating cleaner. We both were talking about getting exercise more. We both were like very much on that train. And I think that was cool, right? Because that's kind of like the foundation, right? That's the foundation. To me, that's the bare minimum of being a human being. You go outside, you eat healthy, you drink water, you sleep well, so on and so forth. And so that really helped me like fix all the things that were broken. I was still smoking weed a lot up until 2020. That's when I stopped. I went cold turkey, and I haven't since. It's been a few years at this point. But cool. So between 2019 and 2020 is where I was sort of in fixing things mode. And that kind of brought me back to zero. And then what I was hoping the direction you would go in when I asked you, where did you start to see things turn around, was 2020, not 2019. Because that's when the world was that's when George Floyd happened. That's when, all these we were both figuring a lot of things out about the world, and we don't have to go into detail about that right now, but we both kind of realized that a lot of the things that we thought were true about reality were untrue. And, we were lied to about a lot of things. And one of them was the sort of gender dynamic and what a man is supposed to be and what a woman is supposed to be. I'll let you talk about that so I don't get terrible comments. You don't have to talk about that. This is about me. So, like I said, 2019, 2020, we're fixing things mode. And I think 2020 is where I really started to gain a sense of direction. Like I felt okay in the sense like my mind was fine. My body was fine, I guess. Like I wasn't, super unhealthy. We were doing 75 hard and whatnot. But I think 2020 is where I started to have that vision, that sort of North Star of like, okay, this is the man I want to be. And it was towards the end of 2020. I remember that. And, once I realized that vision, once I realized that, okay, I had this misconception about what a man is supposed to be. I had this misconception about what masculinity is. I too thought it was toxic. I too thought that, the way that my dad lives, the way that his sort of stoicism was very like, damaging to, your fucking, I don't know, whatever, right? Like everyone told me that because my dad is stoic, because my dad is quiet, because my dad keeps to himself, because my dad works, because my dad's focused on responsibilities, because my dad, focuses on God, focuses on all these other things, that he is the weirdo. He is toxic. He is XYZ. And a lot of people told me that growing up, and I bought into it. So I tried to be the antithesis of that. I tried to be, more in tune with my emotions, more soft, more just, I guess, feminine is the word. If my dad is a sort of embodiment of masculinity, I tried to be the antithesis of that. And that just made me more miserable. And so once I sort of had that, click in my brain of like, oh, like shit, like I'm wrong about all these things. And I made that sort of masculine imperative, my sort of North Star. that's when things went from like the slow upswing to like the massive upswing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
do you have any comments about that?
I don't know what flipped that switch for you. I think it was all the chaos of the
2020,
world
the pandemic,
in 2020,
all
like
that.
everything that happened around that literal crazy time. I don't really recall like a specific. I just remember you just like I remember you started writing, like you told me one day you were started to write out like what you want your kids to be like you what the kind of person you want to be for your future kids. Like
Yep.
I feel like that was something that really triggered like clicked for you, like and like you
Because I wasn't even thinking about kids at that point.
No, we
Because
weren't.
I think what it was, right? This is kind of the rabbit hole I went down, right? So like, the pandemic happened, George Floyd happens, like all these things, like the world's very chaotic, very weird. And a lot of these like different sources of information started rising to the surface. The people that we, engage with now, like the John Doyles, the Matt Walshes, like all these other people, right? Like they started rising to the surface on my social media feeds. And then I listened to them because I started seeing a lot of the things when it came to the pandemic, when it came to George Floyd, when it came to all that other stuff that I was like, I kind of think this is kind of bizarre. And these people kind of also think it's bizarre. And so I started consuming their content, and the things that they talk about made a lot more sense to me, right? Like obviously in terms of what was happening in the world, but also in terms of like, they were a lot more family oriented. They talked a lot about like objectivity versus subjectivity. And to me, that made a lot more sense. Maybe it's because of the way I was raised. Maybe it's because, just how I'm wired. But when I was listening to them talk more about those like traditional family values and just being a traditional man and so on and so forth, and the nuclear family and all those other things, like that made a lot more sense to me. Mm-hmm. That was like, whoa, it wasn't like this groundbreaking thing, but like Jordan Peterson does this a lot. Shout out to Jordan Peterson. He articulates what you already think, but you don't know how to say it.
Right.
And so like both Jordan Peterson and, the guys that we talk about, they did that for me. I had these beliefs, but I couldn't really figure out what they were. And then once they said something, I was like, that's it. Yeah. And then, and that kind of started the snowball of like, okay, now I'm starting to think about family. Now I'm starting to think about the future. Now I'm starting to think about, okay, if I'm supposed to have kids which I always wanted kids. I've always wanted kids, but I was much more like urgent about it because little did I know, I didn't even know that there was that women can't have kids in their 40s, right? Like I didn't know that was a thing. And so a sense of urgency started to develop. And at that point I was like, oh shit, I got to get on this. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to be a father, if I'm going to be, a provider, a protector, all these things, I got to change a bunch of shit, right? Like I'm not where I was, I'm far from where I was in 2018, 2019, but like I am even further away from where I want to be, like because at the time I was still working at Tidal. Well,
none of us were really working. Yeah.
No, by that time I was working again.
No, I was making a COVID joke.
Okay. Uh-huh. But, at that time I was by no means a provider and I was by no means a protector. I knew how to box. Cool. But like, that's one aspect of protecting. And I was just so far away from like, fuck, it's like just this North Star just started shining in the sky for me. And that to me is that, and that's what I've been following since. So I think that's where I went from okay to, I think
God also kind of trickled its way into that realm of time too. Like Christianity, like kind of dabbling in the Bible and like.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that was, I very much kept to myself for a long time, like probably a year.
Yeah. You never said a thing to me about it.
I didn't talk about it because I didn't know how I felt about it. And I certainly didn't know how you felt about it.
Yeah.
Because for a while, like I said, I started watching these certain content creators, and I started thinking like, you know what, like it does make sense because all the things that, and I don't want to get too deep into religious talk right now, but like, this is kind of my thought process. Like all these things that made me miserable, i.e., being selfish, giving into short-term pleasures, living a hedonistic life. And, I guess just the word would be sin. All those things made me feel worse. And so it would make sense that if Christianity is true, then, the opposite of those things would make me feel better. And so I started doing the opposite of those things. I started, being more disciplined. I started, whatever vices that I had, I tried to do them in moderation, which I'm still not the best at. And, I tried to be, a lot of these things I still struggle with, like, being generous with my time, being generous with money, being generous. Like I'm instinctively a selfish guy. I hate to admit that on a podcast, but it's true. Like, I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but, and I did feel better. I did feel like my life was going in the right direction because I was following the doctrines of Christianity. But then I had the dilemma of, well, okay, the doctrines seem to map out to real life, but is the story true? Because I feel like if you're going to be a Christian, you need to believe that the story is true. And I think that's where faith comes in, right? Like, because you have to, I don't know that the story is true, but I have enough faith, for lack of a better term, that orienting myself towards God is going to lead to the best outcome in this life and whatever, happens next. Mm-hmm. So it is a choice, right? Like there are some people who are completely convicted about, Jesus died for our sins and rose on the third day and all those things. It's like, I don't know that. And so anyone who says, well, how do you know that's true? I'm like, I don't know that's true, but I choose to believe that because of how it's impacted my life.
Right.
So that's kind of,
and we came to that conclusion where like, even if it's not, and you spent your entire life with the faith that it was, the byproduct of that faith is going to lead you to the best possible life.
Right. Exactly.
So it's like, it's a win-win,
And if I'm right, if let's have Mr. Atheist in front of me, if I'm right and I'm living a virtuous life, well, let me start that over. I'm bad at this. I'm new to this podcast thing. If he's right, and when we die, it's just blackness and nothing happens, just like it was before, then at least I lived a good life.
Right.
But if I'm right, he's fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just,
So yeah, I mean, it's still something that we're figuring, and this is a weird tangent, but it is what it is. No, it's fine. It's fine. I guess we can talk more about that later on. It's still something that I'm learning and navigating, and obviously we have to be better at it. But I guess I'll ask a few questions that I had, since we kind of have gotten to the end of the story and we're kind of where we're at now.
Well, yeah, I just think to recap, what's gotten you to where you're at now is just.
I want to, before you say that, I want to say something else, because one of the things that I think is really unique about Shayna is that I'm a big believer in polarity between the sexes within a relationship. That if you're going to have a masculine man, you need a feminine woman. And that if you're going to have a feminine man, you need a masculine woman. And if you need a somewhat feminine man, somewhat masculine man, you need a somewhat feminine woman and a somewhat masculine woman. You need that balance, whichever way you spin it. And you've always balanced it out. You know, like when I was Mr. Feminine, fucking man bun, smoking weed.
We forgot to say you had a man bun.
We forgot to talk about the man bun. I had a man bun for like 2 weeks. But you fulfilled the masculine role when necessary. And now that I have usurped your masculinity.
Thank God.
Right. You're like, finally. Now that I'm fulfilling the masculine role within the relationship, you've been able to step back into that feminine role, and you've done so, you know, happily and gracefully.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and we've talked about this. It's unearthed a lot for me too, because I think the generation I grew up in as women, I was fortunate to grow up with my mom at home. My dad owned a business, and my mom I'd come home off the bus and the house was always clean. Some days there were cookies in the oven. You know, some days I'd have new clothes laid out on my bed. Like, my mom was such a good mom, and she was always home for us. And when we were in, like, my brother and I were in like middle school, she started to work at a vet part-time and picked up some work, and she's worked kind of ever since. But when we were kids, like, mom was always there. And I think, and I'm very clean, OCD, and from when I was a little kid. Like, I used to love just cleaning and setting up the house. If my parents went out on a date, I'd love to clean the house, set everything up. When my mom came home, her pajamas were laid out. I've just always been like that nurturer. Like, I've just loved to do that. Always been super clean, OCD, love organizing, yada, yada. But every time someone asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? I never like had this, like, I never wanted to be a veterinarian. I never wanted to be a dentist. I never wanted to be some profession or some job, maybe. Something felt empty for me. Like, I never had an answer. I never had an answer. Even when I was in college, what do you want to go to college for? I don't know. You know, like, I literally didn't know it. I picked like a health major because it wasn't going anywhere, and a lot of my friends were doing it. So I was like, this seems like a good idea. And I was just kind of floating through what I thought was what I was supposed to do.
$100,000 later.
Yeah. Don't recommend. So when, like, finally, like, when he started to be able to flip that and take on the role of what a man, in my view, and what I experienced growing up should do, it kind of made me realize, like, wait, so now that he's going to do that, like, maybe what I want to do is the opposite of that. Like, maybe I do just want to do what I'm good at and, like, take care of a home, like, take care of a husband, take care of kids, and make a home. Because
I didn't tell her to say this.
Never.
By the way.
Like, he's never once, but, like, for me, it's like,
that's just the stuff you enjoy doing.
yeah. Oh, I always have my whole life. Like, everyone in my life will tell you, oh my God, she's crazy. My closet's color coordinated, and I'm constantly organizing.
Look at these books back here. They're in rainbow order. I would have never done that. I've
always been this way, but I never connected the dots to, like, maybe when someone asks you what you want to do, like, I used to joke, I used to be obsessed with the NHL. I always wanted to be a trophy wife. I'd say a trophy wife. Shayna wants to be a trophy wife. She wants to marry an NHL player. And that sounds kind of gross, right? It sounds kind of like a gold digger. You just want people's money. But, like, and I always used to say that because I wasn't making the connection that, like, I wanted to take care of a home. Like, I wanted to do those things, but I never knew that until he started to take over that masculine, like, started to fill that role. And then I was like, wait, I really like the idea of me being. You don't
have to have a career. You don't
and I
have
said
to.
it out loud for, like, the first time. And then I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to do that. And then I'm like, why is that so weird? Like, I remember Dave Ramsey was talking about, we were listening to his show, and he said something about his wife, and he said, you know, he helps people get out of debt, and they got to make all this money. And he's talked to people that have incredible careers and make all this money and all this wealth. And he said that his wife has raised 3 beautiful children. She used to be whatever she did back in the day. It was like whatever she did,
I don't
whatever.
remember.
Raised 3 beautiful children, took care of the home, helped at her church and in her community. And he said, that is the most impressive resume you could ever give me. And like, when he said those words, I was like, For real. Like, let's say the entire world collapses tomorrow. Like, we don't care about your resume. We don't care about your
Right.
Fortune 500 business. We don't care about your bank job. Like, you have to start from the ground. Like, you need to know how to do everyday thing. Like, what's happening in your home. Like, that's the most important thing. That's where
Yeah, people have
everything
it
stems from
backwards.
in a society. So, like, for me, I'm like, hell yeah, I want to focus my life on that. Like, if I have the opportunity, hopefully one day we'll have that opportunity to do that. And I think that as women today, and listen, if you want to be a businesswoman and run apps, all the power to you. Like, this isn't a one size fits all thing. But for me, like, I had no one in my life saying it's okay to like want to be a mom and like take care of a home. But
Yep.
I was always growing up, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? You can't just do that. You need to take
Yeah.
care of yourself. You need to be financially independent. You need to do all these things. And that's not bad advice, but like, it's also okay to want to like pour yourself into your home and in your family.
Yeah, everyone
No one talks about that.
everyone glorifies, the pursuit of finances. But when you think about it on an evolutionary basis, right? Like the job of men was to go out, hunt and get the kill and bring it back home to the family so that they could eat. You know, if you think of it in terms of that now, imagine, right? Like you have this, you're in the hunter gatherer times, you're in the Stone Age, whatever. And rather than there being a family, the husband and the wife both go out and they just collect as much animals as they possibly can. They just stack them up and look at them.
Right.
Right. Like that's it. That's the reality we live in.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of going out and getting money, the purpose of going out and achieving financial wealth is to bring it home to the family and so that they can reap the rewards of that effort. If there's nobody to bring it home to, what's the point? There isn't any. You're just hoarding it. You're just looking at it. Cool. The whole point is to, have a family, reproduce, give them the best life possible. And why would you, if you can have only one person going out and providing and the other person stays home to raise them, then that's going to give you the best outcome. No doubt, because, we see it happen today. Most kids, even though they might have both parents, they don't grow up with both parents. The school raises them because both parents are out working.
Right. And do I think everyone in the world is supposed to have kids? No, absolutely not. I don't believe that at all.
No,
I think,
but more people should than are.
oh yeah, for sure. That's being proven right now. But I just think that message that it's okay for women to men should be raised to want to take care of their families.
Yep.
Like they should want to be a provider. They should want to, and this isn't some toxic masculinity, like this is my money and I call the shots and I make every decision. Like no, like you're a team, you're a partnership, you're in a marriage, like you are creating a world, a family, a life, a future together. You make those decisions together, but you have different roles.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Like you can't have, if you're Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, you can't have both people throwing the ball. You can't have both people catching the ball. It's silly. You're not going to win a football game that way. How you're going to win the football game is putting them in the best positions to succeed based off their skills. And so if you have Rob Gronkowski catching the ball because he's 6'7" or whatever and has giant hands and can catch the ball and jump high, and you have Tom Brady throwing it because he's been throwing a ball since he's 11 years old or whatever, then that's the best chance to succeed. And if within your relationship or your marriage or whatever the case, if the man is better, has a higher likelihood or has a better skill set at collecting money, and the wife is a nurturer and a caretaker, like why wouldn't you put yourself in the best position to succeed for you and your family? So,
yeah, and it took me 28 years to like be okay with wanting that. Yeah. And to this day, like, we'll share with our friends, family, people, whoever. We'll say, no, I like eventually the goal is for me to be home with our children that we have one day and Matthew to bring in the money. And to this day, like people that love me and are my closest people in the world, well, what are you going to do? Like you should have your own money. Like you should have, you need to have your own everything. You need to take care of yourself. And it's like,
why?
It's like
when you get married, there is no
Yeah.
Yours and mine.
Yeah.
It's just ours.
And again, it's coming from a good place.
That's like saying, well, you need your own kids.
Right. It's just kind of like, well, we're creating this, and listen, like things can happen in life and whatever, we could go down that road. But, I just think that message that like being home with children is not a burden. It is not it's hard and unfathomably hard work, and it doesn't stop.
It's harder than making money,
but it's the greatest reward in the planet. And like Dave Ramsey said, in my opinion, there's no greater resume in the world than that. So
with that being said, if you want to help Shayna retire, go to notmattgraham.com and apply for my coaching programs, join my Discord server, do all that stuff. Please and thank you. So with that being said, I think we'll close out with a couple questions that I had, which based on the bullet point list here, we spent the most of the time on the first 3 and not on the last 7. So I don't know if we're going to get through each of these, but my first question is, what would you wish that we had done differently
in our entire relationship?
Yeah.
That question is those kinds of questions are so hard because it's
hard because
what we did led us to where we are, and I like where we're at. So it's hard to say that. Like the way because I'm getting older and we do want to have kids, like the way I'm looking at those types of questions. And I was like, what would I tell my kids to do versus what I did?
I guess that's a better question. What mistakes did we make that you would want our kids to avoid?
I probably wouldn't like we lived with each other like
right away,
right off the bat.
Yeah.
And it was accidental, but like we started dating and like 3 weeks later he was living at my house.
Yeah. Which was not, it was circumstantial partially, but, so yeah, I think the top 3 for me are living together too early. I would say before marriage, quite honestly. I think that yields the best outcome. I think statistically that shows that it yields the best outcome. Cohabitation actually increases the divorce rate. You can look that up. The other thing I would say is you should have kids early if you're going to have kids. Have them young. Also get married young. Young, not like 19, 20 necessarily, but like, early 20s, 22, 23, 24.
I would love to have would have loved to have had a few kids before I turned 30 for sure.
Right.
But I mean, if someone ever tried to give us kids in our first year of dating, as you have heard in the last 2 hours, I had a kid. I had to raise this.
Basically.
You know what I mean? So it's in a perfect world, how I'd answer that question is we wouldn't have lived together. We would have lived together after marriage, and we would have had kids like 4 years ago. But our story didn't equip for that at all.
This is, you're not going to like this answer, but this is my third one, is don't date a woman older than you.
Yeah. This is an anomaly. I wouldn't recommend, like even Beth, like your sister, I would never recommend for her to date a man younger than her.
For a couple reasons. I think they're kind of the reasons are linked, but the first reason being, like you alluded to, that I told this to my sister the other day. I said, if you date, she's 16. If you date someone your age or younger, you're going to have to some degree raise them, because men, they not only do they mature slower than women, but they also need experience in order to fully mature. They need to make mistakes. They can't just read a book and then learn all the lessons they're going to learn. They have to go out and do it. They have to put their hand on the stove to realize, oh wait, the stove's hot. Like that's guys. That's how it works. And they're probably not anywhere near that level of maturity to where they'd be able to be a husband until minimum 24, right? That's my opinion and in my experience. And so I told my sister, like, if you don't want to ride that roller coaster, because it is a roller coaster, as we've explained here, then look for an older guy than you. And that's also going to allow you to have kids earlier and have it be a stable situation for them. Because if you look for a guy that's older than you, he's going to be in a much better situation to facilitate children, right? Both financially, mentally, physically, like all of the above. So if you just want to like plug yourself into a situation, if you're that type of woman and you just want to have kids and like be a mom and all those other things, then I would say look for an older guy that, you know, you can just go along for the ride with.
Mhm.
Don't you wish you did that?
I did sacrifice a couple years for you, that's for sure.
More than a few. More than a few. Do you have anything else in terms of what you would suggest that our kids do differently that pops into your head? No. Those are kind of the big ones. All right. And so this will be the last, actually, two more questions. We're probably going on 2 hours now. So
Oh yeah.
what advice do you have for young men? Because that's my audience. In terms of relationships, like you're a 19, 20-year-old single guy out there. What's your suggestion to him in terms of finding a quality woman?
Oh my God. Dating in today's social media landscape like makes me just want to hug every 19-year-old sweet boy on the planet because I just pray for them. I don't know. I think when you're that young, I think you got to focus on yourself. I think instead of looking for the right partner, you need to become the right partner. So you need to be what you would want to give to somebody else that you love and care about. So work on yourself, get in the gym, get yourself in good physical shape, get yourself financially responsible and like a good, you don't need to have thousands of dollars in your bank account, but like in a responsible place financially. And just, I like to think you want to be the kind of man that you'd want your daughter to date. So aim up, like aim for that, and the right women, you'll attract the right women. And when you have that kind of a standard for yourself, you're gonna thread that into your partner. So you're gonna know right off the bat. Like, yeah, some girl might be hot on TikTok with the blonde thing and the whole whatever, but like, she's gonna have things about her that aren't what you want because the standard for yourself is so high. So I think the mistake people make is they lower their standard because they don't even have a high standard for themselves. So I think you need to work to become, what you'd want for someone that you love.
Mm-hmm.
So the things for men that I've witnessed, physical shape, which bleeds into mental health, and then like a good financial place. And I think
Muscles and money.
Muscles and money, and not money because women want your money and all that, but like that gives you like the freedom to right off the bat, you're in a place to do all those things that a good woman will appreciate and love. Holding the door open for her, taking her out to nice places, making her feel loved and appreciated. You don't need to be buying her Gucci bags and all kinds of gross materialistic
Just
things
wants
like
to
that.
feel
But
taken care
right.
of.
And women want that. I don't give a shit what people tell you. Women want to be taken care of. And that doesn't mean that you pay for all their things and that they're not capable of doing all those things on their own. But there's not a woman in the world who's not going to get that warm feeling. Well, that's a lie because there's psycho women out there who think that this is an insult to them. But like having a man hold a door open for you or beat you to the car and open that door for you is just like, that's where it comes from. You can open a door for a woman knowing damn well she can do it for herself, but you do it anyway because that's the right thing to do. And we all know that. So for me, 19-year-old kid, you don't know where to start with women, start with yourself and aim for the type of man you'd want to see your future daughter with one day. And I don't think you can go wrong.
The better the man you are, the better the women you'll attract.
Boom.
All right. I guess, give me one answer for each of these because we're running out of time. What do you think we do well? What do you think that in our relationship, in our marriage now, that we excel at?
Communication and telling the truth.
I would say so.
I think we're really good at that.
And what do you think we still need work on?
Communication. And to know. What do we still need work on?
Having children.
Well, yeah, it's been like 2 months there, Killa. Keep forgetting we're married. It's so weird. Feels old. No one tells you when you get married, you feel like you're old now. I don't know. What do we not do well at? I think we really crush pretty much, like, relationship wise, like, we do a pretty good job.
I think so.
Like, I don't know many, like, we're pretty solid. Communication and telling the truth is so huge. Like Jordan Peterson, we went and saw him live the other night, and he said he was asked a question. I don't remember what the question was, but his answer to it was telling that, like, for him and Tammy's relationship, him and his wife, a non-negotiable from the very beginning is that they will always tell each other the truth, no matter, like, and really tell the truth, like, not just, I don't like that shirt on you, like, real truth.
Yeah.
And that's been since day one for them. And I think communication and being able to tell the truth and not leave that conversation until you feel better, that you've accomplished something, that you've both learned something, being able to admit when you're wrong, that's that sort of thing. It just, you can't do that enough in a relationship. But I don't know. I mean, what can we do better? I mean, you can put your dishes in the dishwasher. That'd be nice.
That's what I got you for. I got the dish.
What do you think
I
we
got
can
the
do
dishwasher
better?
right here. What do I think we can do better? I don't know. Probably podcast.
Yeah. Well, that remains to be seen. This could be a train wreck. I'm so used to technical difficulties that I'm waiting for us to finish this,
I know,
and you
right?
sit down and be like, "Well, we got to do that again."
I know.
Because, like,
I'm terrified.
something wasn't plugged in or something.
No, it looks good. It's still
Everything
recording.
looks like it's going. So
all right. Well, we have gone on for 2 hours, and I think it's 2 hours is long enough.
yeah,
So
and we get to go eat protein ice cream.
we have to eat protein ice cream. And so, yeah. So any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. No, I'm just glad you never gave up and that you worked really hard.
I'm just getting started.
So just to recap, your top 5, what were the top 5 things that got you from 2018 Matt to 2023 Matt? Top whatever, things that come to mind.
Physical health, personal responsibility. I would say, instead of personal responsibility, extreme ownership.
Jocko, baby.
Let me think. I would say top 5 is a lot of things.
Yeah, that's why I said, well, whatever top things come to mind for you. Those are big ones.
Yeah. You, obviously. And I don't know. My mind's completely blanking, and I don't want to sit
Because
here
I
and
said
sound...
protein ice cream, and that's what all you're thinking about now.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well,
Did it.
we did it. We're going to wrap this up, and then we'll see. Hopefully there's no technical difficulties, and we'll just be able to upload this, and it'll be epic. So, yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. Wingapo. We let a weird one sneak in at the end.
That was it. You did good. You went the whole podcast. I was saying something stupid.